They were on top of the world, selling out arenas, starring in movies, and making millions. Then they said the one thing they shouldn't have. This is the story of 20 comedians who were almost completely canceled. The first story involves a joke so bad it cost the man his most famous job in an instant. 1. Gilbert Gottfried. Everyone knows that voice, that loud, squinty, yelling voice. Gilbert Gottfried was a comedian's comedian for decades. He was known for saying the most shocking things he could think of. But for most of America, he was not just a comic. He was a duck. You see, Gilbert Gottfried was the voice of the Aflac insurance duck. It was a huge, high-paying job that made him a household name. But Gilbert always pushed the limits. Just days after the tragic events of 9/11, he was performing at a comedy club and made some jokes about the tragedy. The room went completely silent. To put it mildly, people were furious. But here is the kicker. He kept his job after that. The real trouble came later. In 2011, a terrible tsunami hit Japan. Gilbert went on Twitter and posted a series of very offensive jokes about it. What many overlooked is that Aflac's business in Japan is actually larger than its business in the U.S. This time, the company did not wait. They fired him almost immediately. He lost his biggest paycheck in a single day. He just could not help himself. But in the end, Gottfried just kept being Gottfried. He leaned into his edgy style, and people eventually remembered him as a comic, not just a duck. Gottfried's firing was swift and all about money. But the next comedian on our list faced a total career meltdown, one that came from his own private and very inappropriate actions. 2. Louis C.K. For a long, long time, Louis C.K. was seen as the king of comedy. He had a hit TV show on FX that he wrote, directed, and starred in. He sold out huge arenas like Madison Square Garden. Critics and fans all agreed he was a comedy genius. His style was all about being painfully honest about his bad thoughts and his messy life. But what many overlooked was that rumors followed him for years. These were not good rumors. They were dark whispers about his private behavior, especially with female comedians. The rumors said he would put women in a very uncomfortable position by performing inappropriate, private actions in front of them. For a long time, it was just a secret that people in the comedy world talked about. Then, in 2017, a big newspaper, the New York Times, published a story. The rumors were all true. Several women went on the record. The fallout was instant. It was like a bomb went off. His network, FX, dropped him. The movie studio distributing his new film, I Love You, Daddy, canceled the premiere and shelved the movie forever. It has almost never been seen since. He lost all his deals, his reputation, and his career overnight. He disappeared for a few years. But here's the thing. He slowly started doing small, unannounced déjeuners, shows at comedy clubs. Then he started self-releasing his own comedy specials online. Believe it or not, he started selling out arenas again. It was one of the most shocking comebacks in comedy history. Louis C.K.'s scandal was about his personal behavior, but the next comedian's career and her #1 TV show ended because of a single terrible tweet. 3. Roseanne Barr. Roseanne Barr was a television legend. Her show, Roseanne, was one of the biggest and most important hits of the 1980s and 90s. It was beloved because it showed a real working-class family that struggled with money. In 2018, the show came back, and it was a massive, shocking success. The reboot premiere was watched by over 18 million people, a number that is almost impossible to get in modern TV. It was the #1 show on television. Roseanne was on top of the world again. She was rich and famous all over again. Then, one late night, she went on social media. She sent a tweet. It was a hateful tweet aimed at a former government worker named Valerie Jarrett. The comment was seen by everyone as deeply hateful and against a person's race. The next morning, the world woke up and saw the tweet. The media went crazy. The network ABC acted faster than anyone had ever seen a network act before. They did not make a statement. They did not suspend her. They canceled her #1 show in an instant. Just like that, the biggest hit on TV was gone. The thing nobody tells you is the show was a billion-dollar property. The network decided to reboot the reboot. They created a new show called The Conners. It used all the same actors except for Roseanne. In the first episode, they explained that her character had passed away. Roseanne was gone, but her show lived on without her. Roseanne lost her show. The next comedian lost one of the biggest jobs in Hollywood before he even started. 4. Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart is, to put it mildly, one of the biggest movie stars on the planet. He sells out football stadiums for his stand-up comedy. He is a box office giant. He is a brand. For a comedian, there is one job that is seen as the very top of the mountain: hosting the Academy Awards, also known as the Oscars. In 2018, Kevin Hart was given that job. It was his ultimate dream. He announced it on social media, and his fans were thrilled. But the thing nobody tells you is the internet never forgets. As soon as he was announced, people started digging. They went back through his old social media posts. They found tweets from around 2010 and 2011. These old tweets had very unkind words about gay people and were seen as hateful. The pressure built up fast. The media went crazy about it. The Oscar Academy, the group that runs the awards, told him to apologize. At first, Kevin refused. He said he had already apologized for those jokes in the past and that he had grown as a person, but the mob was too loud. Just a few days after he got his dream job, he stepped down. He decided not to host. The Oscars. That year, 2019, the Oscars went on without a host for the first time in 30 years. But here's the kicker. Kevin Hart is, well, Kevin Hart. He is too big to fail. He gave a more serious apology, waited for the storm to pass, and went right back to making blockbuster movies. Hart's old tweets cost him a job, but for the next comedian, his tweets cost him his entire UK career. 5. Andrew Lawrence. In the United Kingdom, Andrew Lawrence was a familiar face. He was a stand-up comedian with a unique, grumpy style. He had a spiky haircut and was on a lot of popular TV comedy panel shows. He had a following and was a successful touring comic. Then the Euro 2020 soccer final happened. It was a huge game for the country. England was playing against Italy, and the game went to penalty kicks. England lost in a heartbreaking way. 3 of the players who missed their kicks, Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, and Bukayo Saka, were all young black men. After the game, these players faced a wave of terrible, hateful comments online. And Andrew Lawrence decided to join in. He went on Twitter and posted some truly awful, race-based comments about the players. He even made a joke about them. To put it mildly, his career ended in one night. The backlash was instant. His agent, the company that got him all his jobs, dropped him immediately. Then all the theaters he was booked to play at for his upcoming tour began to cancel his shows. One by one, over 19 different theaters publicly announced they would not let him perform. He was blacklisted from the entire industry. He did not really survive, at least not in the mainstream. He now posts his comedy directly to the internet for a small group of followers who agree with him. Lawrence was kicked out for hateful words. The next person on our list was not just kicked out of theaters, he was kicked off the entire internet. 6. Graham Linehan. Graham Linehan is a name you might not know, but you definitely know his work. He is a comedy writing genius. He is the man who created huge, beloved hit shows like Father Ted, Black Books, and The IT Crowd. He was one of the most respected writers in British comedy. But in recent years, Linehan became obsessed with one single topic: his views on trans people and gender identity. He became very, very vocal on his social media, especially Twitter. He shared opinions that many people found to be hateful and harmful to the trans community. He would argue with people for hours. It took over his entire life. The backlash was huge. But this time, the backlash came from his own industry. Actors he had worked with spoke out against him. He says he cannot get work writing comedy anymore. He has been effectively blacklisted. What many overlooked is that his behavior had real-world consequences. A musical version of his hit show, Father Ted, was in the works, but the producers blocked him from being involved because of his online comments. The ultimate blow, his social media. Accounts like Twitter were permanently suspended for his comments. He has not backed down. He continues to speak out, but his career in comedy is, for the most part, over. He is now known more as an activist than a comedian. Linehan lost his career over his personal opinions. The next comedian lost his show because of his onstage character. 7. Dapper Laughs. Dapper Laughs, whose real name is Daniel O'Reilly, was a new kind of star. He did not get famous from TV. He got famous from the internet on a platform called Vine. His character, Dapper Laughs, was a loud, crude man. He represented a type of lad humor. His comedy was full of very basic jokes, many of which were about women and were seen as very rude and offensive. His catchphrase was, "She knows." But his internet fame was so big that a real TV network, ITV, gave him his own show. It was called Dapper Laughs. On the Pull. The show was about him helping men learn how to talk to women, but it was widely criticized. People started looking closer at his act. They found a clip from one of his live stand-up shows. In the clip, he made a very offensive and crude joke about a female audience member. The public outcry became massive. A petition was started to get him taken off the air, and it got over 50,000 signatures. The network listened. They canceled his show. He then went on a serious news program, looking clean-shaven and sad. He announced he was retiring the character forever, saying he did not realize the harm he was causing. But you cannot keep an internet character down. A few years later, he slowly brought the character back online. Dapper Laughs was canceled for his act. The next comedian's career was destroyed by a single, terrible word he used on stage. 8. Michael Richards. Everybody loved Kramer. On the TV show Seinfeld, Michael Richards was a comedy icon. He played the wacky, energetic neighbor who always burst through the door. He won multiple Emmy Awards for the role. He was one of the most famous people on TV. After Seinfeld ended, Richards went back to his roots, stand-up comedy. He was performing at a famous club in Los Angeles called the Laugh Factory. During his set, some audience members, who were black, were talking. This made Richards angry. He did not just get angry, he exploded. He went on a shocking, hateful rant. He screamed a terrible racial slur at the audience members. Over and over again, he used the worst word you can imagine. What he did not know was that someone in the audience was filming it on their old-school camera phone. The video went viral. This was in 2006, even before the first iPhone. The clip was everywhere. It was on the news, the internet, everywhere. His career was over. just like that. He tried to apologize. He went on The Late Show with David Letterman via a satellite feed with Jerry Seinfeld by his side. But the apology was awkward and strange. The damage was done. He basically retired from public life. He only reappeared years later, playing a version of himself on his friend Jerry Seinfeld's other show, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. Richards' career ended from one hateful rant. The next comedian on our list keeps making jokes that should get him canceled, but they don't. 9. Ricky Gervais. Ricky Gervais is the man behind the original British version of The Office. He is a comedy superstar. He is also famous for hosting the Golden Globes Awards, where he would stand on stage and just roast every famous actor in the room. It was brutal, and people loved it. Gervais has built his modern career on being anti-woke. He loves to push buttons. In his recent comedy specials on Netflix, he has made a lot of jokes about trans people. He makes these jokes a central part of his act, often saving them for the end of his show. Every single time he releases a new special, the backlash is huge. People protest. News articles are written. Activists on social media call for him to be taken off the air and for his specials to be removed. But here is the kicker. He just does not care. He says the jokes are just jokes and that people are not allowed to be offended. And the streaming services? They keep paying him millions and millions of dollars for more specials. His 2021 special Supernature caused a huge storm, but it still got a 92% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. It showed a massive split between critics and the public. His tours sell out in minutes. He is the definition of uncancelable. He seems to feed on the controversy. Gervais thrives on the backlash. He is a lot like the next comedian on our list, who might be the most controversial and successful comic alive today. 10. Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle is a living legend. His TV program, Chappelle's Show, from the early 2000s, is seen as one of the best sketch comedy shows of all time. He was so famous he walked away from a $50 million contract because he was not happy with the show's direction. After a long time away, he came back. And he came back in a big way, with a series of huge comedy specials. But his new material was different. Like Gervais, his recent specials have focused heavily on jokes about the trans community. He has made these jokes the big, thoughtful finale of his shows. This led to massive protests. The backlash was even bigger than what Gervais got. People inside the streaming company, Netflix, even staged a walkout. They protested their own employer, demanding that his specials be removed. But what many overlooked is the power of Dave Chappelle. The CEO of Netflix, Ted Sarandos, stood by Chappelle. He sent a memo to all employees saying he would not remove the special. In fact, Netflix reportedly paid Chappelle $20 million per special. Not only did he survive the cancellation attempt, he got a new, even bigger contract. He is bigger than ever. He proved that if you are famous enough and your audience is loyal enough, you can say almost anything. Chappelle and Gervais used controversial topics to get more famous. The next comedian was canceled for something she did years ago in a comedy sketch. 11. Sarah Silverman. Sarah Silverman has built her entire career on being shocking. Her comedy character is a sweet, innocent-looking person who smiles and then says the most offensive thing you can possibly imagine. She loves to tackle taboo topics, but something she did in the past came back to haunt her. In a 2007 episode of her TV show, The Sarah Silverman Program, she did a sketch. In the sketch, she wanted to find out what was harder, being Jewish or being black. So her character decided to wear blackface, painting her face to look like a black person for a day. At the time, it aired on TV. But years later, in the modern climate, that clip resurfaced. People were horrified. Using blackface is seen as one of the most offensive things a performer can do. Sarah Silverman said she was deeply ashamed of it and that she would never do that joke today. But it did not matter. She revealed in an interview that she was suddenly fired from a brand new major movie role. She said she was fired the night before she was supposed to start filming. They fired her over the phone, all because of that one old sketch from a decade earlier. Her career stalled for a bit, but she was already a big, respected name in comedy. She apologized, explained the context, and was able to keep working and touring. Silverman was fired for a sketch. The next comedian was canceled in the middle of his show for the show itself. 12. Jerry Sadowitz. In Scotland, Jerry Sadowitz is a legend of underground comedy. He is known for being extremely offensive and shocking. That is his whole act. He is not for everyone, and his fans know what they are getting. He was booked to perform at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, a huge and famous arts festival. People knew what his show was going to be. But his show was, well, it was him. It was full of jokes that were called hateful, offensive, and just plain wrong. The backlash was not from the audience, but from the staff at the venue. The venue itself, which hosted the festival, decided to cancel his second night. They shut him down. They released a public statement saying that his content was not a joke and does not align with our values. This happened after he had already performed the first night to a sold-out crowd. His fans were furious. They said that is what he is supposed to do. They were angry that the venue would book him, knowing his act, and then act surprised. He is still a cult figure, but the incident proved that even shock comedy has its limits in the modern age. Sadowitz was canceled for his act. The next comedian, a legend from Australia, was canceled for his personal opinions. 13. Barry Humphries. You might not know the name Barry Humphries, but you definitely know his character. He was the man behind Dame Edna Everage. That is the hilarious, cat-talking lady with the bright purple hair and the crazy, sparkly glasses. He was a comedy giant in Australia and the UK. But Barry Humphries, the man behind the makeup, was an older man with old-school opinions. In several interviews, he made comments that were seen as very critical of trans people. He shared opinions that were considered outdated and hateful. The backlash was quiet, but very powerful. The Melbourne International Comedy Festival is one of the biggest comedy festivals in the world. For 20 years, its most important award was called the Barry Award, named after Barry Humphries. After his comments, the festival made a big decision. They quietly renamed the award. They removed his name completely. The award is now just called the Melbourne International Comedy Festival Award, which is a much less catchy name. It was a huge statement. Humphries was very old at this point. Some of his shows were pulled. He passed away a few years later, and his incredible comedy legacy was now stained by the controversy. Humphries was an old-school legend who got in trouble. The next comedian is a young star who got in trouble for being too successful. 14. Nabil Abdul Rashid. Nabil Abdul Rashid is a British comedian who had a massive breakthrough. He appeared on the huge TV talent show Britain's Got Talent. His comedy act was different. It was about his life as a black Muslim living in Britain. He made jokes about race, religion, and the prejudice he faces. He was sharp, funny, and fearless. He was a huge hit on the show. The judges loved him, and he made it all the way to the finals. But his jokes made some people very angry. Thousands of complaints were filed to Ofcom, the organization in the UK that watches over television. People claimed his act was too political for a family show. Some even said his jokes about racism were anti-white. In total, Ofcom received over 2,000 complaints about his performance. But here is the thing. Ofcom investigated and cleared him completely. They released a statement saying his jokes were part of a comedy routine, were not hateful, and were an important part of public discussion. He did not win the show, but he became a huge star because of it. The attempt to cancel him actually made him more famous. Nabil was cleared. The next comedian said a terrible word on stage, and the backlash was surprisingly small. 15. Daniel Kitson. Daniel Kitson is a very different kind of comedian. He is not famous on TV. He is a comedian's comedian, beloved by critics and other comics. His fans are deeply loyal. His shows are more like storytelling or performance art. During one of his live shows, he used an offensive slur. It was the P word, a hateful term for people from Pakistan. An audience member who was a fan wrote about it. They were shocked and disappointed. A small storm started online. People who loved his nice and thoughtful brand of comedy were horrified. But here is what many overlooked. Daniel Kitson is almost impossible to cancel. He does not use social media. He does not have a Twitter account. He rarely does interviews. He is not part of the mainstream system. There were no real-world consequences. He did not lose any gigs. He did not lose any TV panel show appearances because he does not do them. Because he is an art comedian, he was protected from the usual mob. His small, loyal audience had to decide for themselves if they wanted to keep supporting him. Kitson was protected by his niche. The next comedian nearly derailed his own career by feuding with other podcast hosts. 16. Theo Von is a podcast king. His show this past weekend is one of the biggest in the world. He has a very unique style that fans call cringe comedy. He tells long, winding stories about his strange childhood in Louisiana. But Theo got into some very public, very messy feuds with other big-name comedians in the podcast world, like Brendan Schaub and Bobby Lee. These were not funny, friendly feuds. They got ugly. Videos were made. Insults were thrown. Fans started to pick sides. People online called Theo a snake and a bad friend. It threatened to ruin his nice guy image, which was a huge part of his brand. For a while, it was the only thing the podcast world could talk about. But Theo weathered the storm by just being Theo. He kept putting out his podcast. He kept being his weird, funny self. His fan base is so loyal, they are called the Rat King's Army. They stuck with him. He proved that in the new world of podcasting, the only thing that matters is the connection with your audience. He is bigger than ever. Theo's near cancellation was about his friendships. The next story is about an A-list actor who tried to become a comedian and ruined it with one slap. 17. Will Smith. Will Smith, the Fresh Prince. He is one of the biggest movie stars of a generation. For 30 years, he was beloved. He was the ultimate, safe, four-quadrant movie star. In recent years, he was trying to pivot. He was on social media, making funny videos. He wrote a book. He was even telling funny, honest stories on stage. He was building a new, more open personality, almost like a comedian. Then, the Oscars in 2022. Comedian Chris Rock was on stage. He made a joke about Will Smith's wife, Jada. The joke was in poor taste. But what happened next was shocking. Will Smith walked onto the stage in the middle of the live show and slapped Chris Rock hard in the face. He then walked back to his seat and yelled at Chris. The whole world watched, live. To put it mildly, the backlash was total. It was the only thing anyone talked about for weeks. His new movies were delayed. He was banned from attending the Oscars for 10 years. What many overlooked is that this totally overshadowed his own win. He won his very first Oscar for Best Actor just 30 minutes after the slap. His career is not over, but his funny guy comedian pivot? That is gone for good. He is slowly trying to rebuild his image as a serious actor, not the fun-loving guy everyone grew up with. Will Smith's slap was a real-world event. The next comedian scandal was all about a fake stunt that people thought was real. 18. Joe Lycett. Joe Lycett is a popular British comedian who is known for his silly stunts and pranks. He is a consumer affairs comedian. He fights for the little guy by doing things like legally changing his name to Hugo Boss to protest the fashion brand. His fans love him for this. They see him as a prankster who speaks truth to power. So he staged a big public stunt. He pretended to be furious at a major bank, HSBC. He posted angry videos, he went on rants, and he had a showdown with the bank. But here's the kicker. It was all fake. The whole thing was a pre-planned advertisement for the bank. He was paid by them to stage the protest to help them promote their new climate policies. His fans felt betrayed. They thought he was a real activist, but he was just doing an ad. He faced more backlash from his own fans for this fake ad than for any of his real pranks. He lost a lot of trust. He had to apologize and explain himself. He is still popular, but he learned that you cannot fool your own audience. Joe Lycett's fans felt betrayed by a stunt, but the next comedian's fans felt betrayed by a terrible lie about a national tragedy. 19. Stephen Rannazzisi. You might know him as Ruxin from the hit show The League. Stephen Rannazzisi was a rising comedian and actor. He was that funny, fast-talking guy on a very popular show. But he had a story he told. For years, he told a powerful and scary story. He said he was working in the World Trade Center on 9/11. He said he was in one of the towers and just barely escaped. He described running for his life. It was a core part of his public identity. Then, in 2015, a newspaper, the New York Times, did some checking, and it was all a lie. He was not working there. He was not even in the building. He was working in a different part of town. He made the whole thing up. This was a lie so big, so offensive, it was shocking. To lie about surviving a national tragedy. For fame? The backlash was immediate. His show, The League, was still on the air at the time. What many overlooked is that he had told this lie for 14 years. His own wife, who he met after the event, even believed he was a survivor. He was forced to apologize. He was lucky The League was already ending, so he could not be fired. But his career stalled. He's never reached that level of fame again. A lie about 9/11 is hard to top, but the last comedian on our list faced backlash for his entire point of view, and he was so powerful it did not even matter. 20. Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart is a hero to many people. For 16 years he hosted The Daily Show. It was a fake news program on Comedy Central, but many people trusted him more than real news anchors. But in the world of news and politics, he was seen as a problem. People on the right said his comedy was not comedy at all. They said it was just liberal bias dressed up as jokes. People on the left sometimes got mad when he criticized them, too. He had huge public feuds. He went on the real news channel, CNN, and got in a famous shouting match with the hosts. People called his style a bigotry of its own. He was constantly being called on to apologize or to just be funny. But here is the thing. Jon Stewart was untouchable. He was so popular and so trusted he could not be canceled. A 2008 poll found that Stewart was voted most admired journalist by Americans, even though he always insisted he was just a comedian. He was so powerful that he could make or break political ideas or even other news shows. He left The Daily Show at the very top of his game, a comedy legend who changed the way people watch the news. He proved that sometimes, if you are big enough, the cancellation just cannot stick.